What does it mean to plant your flag? It means you're not afraid.
It means you're passionate about what you do.
It means you're here to serve others.
In business, in life.
In good and bad.
You aren't afraid to fly your colors proudly because you know
you serve a greater purpose. This is the Plant Your Flag podcast with Mike Bean and Jeremy Mountain.
Hello and welcome back to the Plant Your Flag podcast. I'm here with Mike. It's your two favorite Bean Media team members, leaders. I don't know what to call us.
I mean, any of the above I think works out.
Bean Sprouts.
Right.
We're back. We're back. The Bean team is back. No guests today. Yeah. We're your guests today. Obviously, we started off this podcast with Mike and I, and we figured we would sort of come back every fifth episode or so, and then we realized that we're both kind of hosting one each, and we're obviously rotating. If you haven't checked out the old episodes, go check those out. But we're about 6 episodes in. We've both hosted 3 each, so we figured it was a good time to do a little bit of a recap. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening or watching. And thanks to everybody for the engagement and feedback on a lot of the clips. I feel like it's going pretty well so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. Thanks for everybody who's been on it and anybody who has, subscribed and has followed along to all the episodes along the trail.
It's been pretty fulfilling, pretty exciting. I think so far so good. You know, we're not top 10 in the world yet.
No, and we kind of knew this going into it, that this had a specific niche. It wasn't going to be something that everybody was going to immediately gravitate towards. We're expecting more people who maybe are interested in growing their business or starting their business, or been through some of these trials and tribulations in the past to find some maybe a little bit of humor and like, okay, I've been through that before, but also there's other folks out there. We've gotten some like I said, some good feedback, whether it be someone saying, hey, that you run into, I saw it, I thought that was pretty cool. Or some of the comments, but 7 episodes, it's going to be a little bit of a slow roll getting to where we want to go.
Yeah. Only like 600 more to go.
Yeah.
But until the world ends, which unfortunately is looking more and more realistic every day, but until that happens, we got at least 9 months.
Yeah.
So until that happens, we're going to keep rolling and keep shooting. And, thank you for listening. This is the 7th episode. So what we wanted to do today was sort of talk about each episode in a sense of what we took away from it, or something memorable, or something that we learned, or something that just stuck out to us. And we were going to kind of go backwards from the most recent episode and just drop like one sort of tidbit that we took away from it as, people that are sort of in the same boat as these people that are running their own business and sort of managing their own business. It's been interesting to hear from so many different industries. One of the best things about what we do is we get to sort of have our hands in a lot of different businesses where there is really everyone needs some of our services at least, or at least they need someone like us in their pocket to make good business decisions when it comes to digital marketing and things of that nature. And it was extremely interesting to sort of spend time with these people, both some that we have worked with and some that we haven't necessarily known or worked with. I particularly found it interesting talking to a couple people that I didn't really know, including Jenn from Spark Fitness.
Yeah.
And then also someone that I did know, Tony.
Yeah.
And I managed to screw up his company name in the opening stanza.
Right. Well, I mean, which shows this perfection is not what we're shooting for. I think that's part of the fun in this.
Yeah. Transparency.
It's not like, let me do another take.
Yeah. Let's go. Do it again.
Right. Yeah.
Do it again. Yeah. So if we just kind of go back from the most recent, you spent time with Eric Conrad from Junk Luggers, and I know that you had something specific that you really enjoyed, something that he had to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric was great. First off, everybody was great and a lot of fun. Whether I was hosting, you were hosting, whatever it might be. I also think that that's kind of the interesting, different part about this. Not everybody approaches it that way. Maybe we'll find out there's a reason.
Yeah.
But no, I really did enjoy my conversation with Eric. And one of the things that really stuck with me beyond him talking about the craziest thing he ever saw, which was caught me off guard, and it was fun to watch
go
that
check
back.
that out.
Yeah, so the craziest thing he ever saw. Yeah, check that out on episode 6.
No spoiler alert.
No.
You got to watch the episode.
Right. Yeah.
You'll be in for a treat.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, he told me about that. I went home, I checked my attic, and made sure I had a plan in place for if something happens to me, and Drunk Luggers needs to come in and clean that out.
Yeah, just in a nutshell, when you die,
Yeah.
whatever you got, people are gonna find.
Right. Yeah. It's like skeletons in your closet or whatever it might be. You think you've got it bad on social media, but but he had brought up a really good analogy, metaphor, however you want to phrase it, in talking about starting a business. He franchised, and so he kind of went about it a very different way than I did. So he had to take out a loan and purchase the franchise. So he came in with more upfront capital, where I grew more slowly and organically without any capital and not much of a plan, to be honest. So he was talking about pulling back that lever on a pinball machine, and pulling it back was doing his research and talking to the bank and doing all of those things that you need to do to pick the right franchise. And then from there, once you've got all that done, it's letting that lever or that that pull. What do you call that?
Yeah, it's like a
Plunger.
spring.
It's
springy type thingy.
So anyhow, you pull that back, and then once it just you let go, the ball goes up into the pinball machine, and it bounces off this that you don't expect. It bounces off that you don't expect, and really those flippers at the bottom, that's where you really that's running the business.
Yeah.
And it's making sure that ball stays up in play and it doesn't fall down in between those two flippers. And I thought that was a really cool way of thinking about it, because it is, I think, from experiencing some of those things, it is like that at times. It's wearing a lot of different hats. It's keeping things together, keeping the ball, where you want it to be. And, the nice thing about it, though, if you kind of take that analogy to the next level, is that if the ball does fall between those flippers, there's other balls, that you can go ahead and you could pull it again. And so not every.
And how many balls? You
Right.
only have so many before you're out, and you got to put more quarters in.
Right.
Find someone give you more quarters
Right.
to put back into it.
Right, exactly. And you might need to borrow those from a friend or go to the change machine. Maybe the change machine is, like ZipRecruiter or something. And we're going to charge for that, ZipRecruiter.
Yeah, thanks to our sponsor, ZipRecruiter.
Right. And so I think that's a really, really cool way of thinking of it. And I don't know if he came up with that by himself, or if it was something that somebody had taught him.
Yeah, or if then did it just come up organically?
Yeah.
That's kind of like when the record light goes on and lights go on, you do sort of go into a different mind space, and who knows? I wonder if that was something that he had ever even said before. Ever.
Yeah, and I'll have to ask him. Should I text him? No. No, I'll ask him, because it was I've talked to him since, and with those conversations, he has expressed how much fun he had, and he actually shared a clip before we did.
Yeah.
He leaked one, and which was fine. That's the fun of this, and that, we talked in the very first episode about the ability to break this content down, and he's gotten a lot of positive feedback from people. And turned out that we knew some of the same people who didn't even know it. Mm-hmm. So it is the cool power of social media and this platform, that starts bringing common ideas and common people together. So it's cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting to sort of put someone, I think, as someone who's not necessarily a business owner, but I've been able to sort of see these people be able to sit down. It's sort of rewarding just to see people get to be the star for a couple minutes, even if it's just on our podunk little podcast for 30 minutes. It's still like you are the star for a couple minutes, and you get to sort of tell your tale. And I mean, I feel like nobody has really walked out of here with bad energy
No,
after shooting.
not at all. I think that it's a lot of, we're appreciative that they took time out of their day to do this with us. But they, it's a constant, like, thanks, that was so much fun. And, they're like Cathy from the Kenton Chamber. She, they had worked that into their monthly newsletter, that they had done this, that they sent out to the community. It's really cool to see it reciprocated and the appreciation, because we know that it might be a little intimidating and, oh shoot, I don't know, what would I say, that kind of thing. But yeah, once they get into it and they realize that it's just really not much different than just talking to a friend or whatever it might be.
Right, exactly. And so with that being said, the 5th episode, Tony Luckoski from Advanced Sewer and Drain Cleaning nailed it.
Yeah, there it is.
Didn't nail it on the episode, but
yeah, you said you learned a little bit more about him than you realized, and you had some takeaways from that.
Yeah, I found it particularly interesting just to hear some of the stories that he had, going back to the beginning and sort of how he got started, and he didn't necessarily envision it, but then, some of the things that came to the surface. One of the things also that I found interesting that sort of come up in the conversation that might not in a different conversation was the fact that he compared the diagnostic sort of diagnosing something from a sense of like deconstructing something similar to a car issue, a mechanical issue, and his experience in auto mechanics, transferring over to plumbing, because you do sort of have to figure it out. And I kind of found that somewhat similar to what we do, in that there's a lot of things out there from a digital marketing standpoint, best practices, strategies, things like that, but it is sort of a never-ending game, and sort of like the old screensaver Pipe Dreams, I think it was called, on Windows, where it was just like endless pipes going.
Oh, right.
It does get like that sometimes, and I think that's what I personally take pride in doing for people, is sort of making that just myriad of confusion, sort of making it make sense to them and making them feel like they trust that we have, some semblance of control over that.
Because you need to, it's like the duck kind of, analogy.
Right.
With the feet are always moving under, but the duck seems like it's calm on top. So when we communicate with who we're working with and tell them, we have to kind of break it down, because we don't want to be that agency, that company that does the overspeak. So we want to kind of deliver it in a way that makes sense. And, it's not all of the like little nuances are all so important to them understanding that, where this lead came from or what it took to get there.
Yeah, and the multiple different campaigns and strategies, and the more sort of investment by a client, the more responsibility we would have then to sort of navigate that and validate that and put it into the best, strategy possible. But I found that interesting. And then the other thing, just like, I think it was somewhat relieving that he told the story about, just that emergency situation where there was water just coming through the wall, through the ceiling, and that just hearing him tell the story from that sense of like relief telling it, but also reliving it. Yeah. It did like just bring me like authentic happiness, but like mutual relief of like, I've never been in that situation, but there's been situations where it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But it just goes to show you that like it's a requirement to be resilient, whether you're owning a business or managing a business or managing a campaign or whatever it is that you do in your own industry. That's sort of like everything is going to get scary once in a while.
Yeah. And I think, I certainly know what you're talking about. And I think with what he was talking about, just seeing the way that he explained it, it was, he just clicked into gear and he took care of it. And in the moment, he wasn't thinking about anything other than a solution. And
Foxhole.
even though if we were presented with something like that, we would be freaking out. But he was just like, this is why I do what I do, because I have to. And I put a comment, I think, on one of his posts that was exocartonic. I think I got that from Dennis Miller, like outside of the box, exocartonic thinking. And where I think you can find some solace in and some comfort in knowing that your industry can be hectic and crazy at times, but we know how to champion it. And he, had a similar story, but it was completely different. Yes. And so I think some inside the emotions are probably very similar.
Yes. The sweat.
But even though the application is so different, there's that time that I thankfully you caught it 5 minutes later that I put an extra 0 in the one column for, an ad.
Yes.
And right away caught it. I was trying to reduce the budget, and you
heart stops for a couple seconds. Yeah. Flush face, peaked.
Right. Yeah.
But that stuff happens, and it seems to happen across a lot of different industries. Speaking of a lot of different industries, Cathy was someone that you hosted with from the Kenton Chamber, and I know that you had some key takeaways from that conversation.
Yeah, Cathy was great to talk to, and it was a little different with her because she had shared some previous experiences outside of the Chamber of Commerce, but truth to be told, we had somebody else lined up, and the day before I had reached. I guess that's another example of how great it's been for people just to step up and be comfortable doing this with us, because we had someone cancel on us last minute. And I called her, and it was the next day, and I asked if she would be interested, and she said, absolutely, I'd love that. So it was really, really great to have her in here. And I'm glad it worked out that way, because even though in the seat that she's in today, it's not technically a business owner who planted their flag, but she's so heavily involved with so many different businesses and helping them plant their flag. Mm-hmm. And she had mentioned about how much gratification she gets out of that role. And when people come up to her and talk about starting a business, she's saying, "Go for it. Just give it a shot." And she's very, very positive. And she had mentioned that. And she also talked about the importance of being positive and the advice that she gives people who are looking to start a business and plant their flag. And she said that you want to surround yourself with positive people and divorce yourself from the negative people, and don't listen to, it's not to mean that divorce, you have to remove that person from your life, but maybe remove that person from making a decision whether or not you're going to take that leap into planting your flag, or maybe not include that person in the conversations that are important about things that they're going to just, I'm going to say it, shit on.
Yeah.
And I think that was really cool that we have somebody right here in our backyard who's advocating for these things day in and day out, and guiding people into areas that they may not know about when it comes to grant opportunities, right, and other things like connecting people to people. Yeah. Hey, I could use a bookkeeper, or I could use X, Y, or Z. And because of her position, she's got so many strong relationships that if she recommends someone to me, I'm going to take it seriously, because I have a lot of respect for her and the people she knows and what she does. So I think it was a great fit, even though at first it didn't, maybe make sense to somebody who wouldn't look at it through those lenses. Like, well, she doesn't own a business. She doesn't own the Kenton Chamber.
Yeah.
She has her hands in so many different businesses and positively affects so many that it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I think it falls in line with, we always say, create, don't negate, and something that we sort of both internally communicating with each other, and then also even with our clients, we always try to sort of say, you want to create that next idea, not negate that previous idea. And I think it goes to show you how many businesses wouldn't have started if not for people like Cathy, and for people that sort of cheerlead, but also be positive, be realistic. And I think that was actually something that Jenn from Spark Fitness spoke about. Was she said, if you want to do it, find someone that has done it, and sort of connect yourself and surround yourself with those types of people. And that was somewhat eye-opening, that she had come from like somewhat of a corporate background and didn't really have, a father or a mother or an uncle that was a business owner. And that was sort of eye-opening to see that she sought out that sort of mentor to help her better understand her vision for starting her business. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But then also personally, the thing that stuck out to me is like I'm having a kid in November, and when she said, she got sort of very serious when she was like, we had a very fun, jovial conversation, but she got pretty real when she stated like, there's going to be sacrifices that are needed to be made. And that raw realness of the way she said it, it stuck with me because it was like, well, that was the truth. And that's what we're looking for on these podcast episodes and talking to these people, is we're trying to sort of get the real raw truth. And that was real. It was raw. And then personally, it was like eye-opening to see like, yeah, like now that I haven't even necessarily had a kid yet, but just the amount of like headspace that has started to occur in my brain, it's like, oh, there wouldn't be room for both, really.
Yeah, because she had said, right, specifically, your kids are going to take a back seat and like family and
kids,
like
family, just sort of like you may not be able to make everything and go to everything, and I think that's become more clear. And myself 5 to 10 years ago, that wouldn't have resonated with me. It wouldn't have been something that I would have understood really. But it kind of makes a lot more sense now that that's getting a lot more real in my own my own neck of the woods here.
Yeah.
But so like she specifically sought out someone who had done their own thing. I believe it was like a meal prep business, and they had grown organically here in Buffalo. And I actually was over there around the corner. I think it was Core Life that she mentioned. Could be wrong, but I walked into one of those and I was like, interesting. This was someone's idea. This came from the mind of someone. And I think that's what's really interesting about, once again, what we do, but why we're doing this podcast is these people are starting, not always starting an idea from being the first idea ever, but if it is something that's been done before, it's something that's done in their own way, in their own style, with their own voice, with their own brand. And that's what we get to do for people, is take that, how do we communicate that to potential customers and deviate from another company. So whether it's never been done before, it's totally unique, or if it's something that's been done like plumbing or taking junk out of a house. But how does this company, why is a customer going to pay this company versus another company?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the business to business, people buying from people, truly comes in.
Yeah, and with Jenn, you hadn't met her in the past, and she was new to us, and I have been fortunate enough to interview or talk with, however you want to phrase it, people who I've known and had some sort of a relationship with over the years, but you had the opportunity to talk with somebody fresh, blank.
Yeah, it wasn't
slate.
easy.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, what was it like? Yeah.
Well, I found it like, once again, she made it easy.
That's cool.
Like once we were on, she was like lights out, like impressive. She was clearly someone who's like not afraid, just not afraid of the lights, so to speak. But leading up to that, it was a different experience to host with someone that I had not communicated with like personally before. And as we were sort of getting ready, I was like going through the questions, and I was like kind of getting a little nervous and anxious. And like, then I just started talking to her like I was standing outside of the Pink or outside of a bar somewhere, and just thought, all right, well, if I have a limited amount of time here before we turn the camera on, why not just shoot the shit a little bit? And we ended up kind of talking, and we knew some mutual people from our local areas, and that, I think, then I was like, okay, like I know this person at least a little bit, and I think that made it a lot easier. But that's not to say that we can't have more people on that we
Oh,
that we
yeah.
don't know.
I
'Cause
look forward to
it was
it.
exhilarating.
Yeah, I
We
can
got to get
imagine.
you one so you
I know,
that.
I know, it's not fair because we do every other. Well, I think I've got a really nice one lined up for you next, so we'll see if that pans out.
Yeah, that would be exciting.
Yeah.
Because that's there's a lot of people that
Yeah,
I've heard a lot of good stories.
yeah,
about
yeah.
that
So
individual.
we'll keep that under wraps until it happens. But yeah, we've got some pretty cool upcoming guests, which I'm excited about. But yeah, I mean, we've interviewed people in the past that in a different way, like we said in episode 1. Where the other model that we've used up until doing podcast style type conversations was me behind the camera with a camera operator, and then only we cut out the questions and we make succinct videos. And in that setting, I've done quite a few of them, and some of them have gone really, really well, and some of them I wish would have gone a little bit differently. But you learn from it. And we were talking prior to this, there was one guy who we worked with way back. It was like probably almost 11 years ago. And he was a very high executive, high up. He wasn't high, like he wasn't smoking
He was
weed.
very high.
Yeah, he was a super high executive. And so he comes after he puts the Visine in, and we sit down. And we
His
were
blunt roller
right.
took away his little tray. And
Right.
got out
Oh,
of the way.
that was something I experienced too. I actually had
That was a different high executive.
like a potential client, and he had a whole pile of weed sitting out on the counter, and he was waiting on his blunt roller. We did not do business with him. But anyhow, now it's legal. But this guy was, I was nervous to begin with, and clearly so was my camera operator, because he forgot to hit record, and it was so embarrassing. But we made it around. We ended up figuring it out, and it was, like I said, the nerves weren't, that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
That we needed that extra layer.
Yeah.
To be. But that second one went a lot smoother than the first one. I will say that.
Yeah.
And those are the lessons you learn the hard way, but you never make that mistake again.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's also something that you and Jared from Bradley Tree, we've been working with them for a while, and you had sort of done that interview style with him before.
Yeah.
Versus this style. What did you sort of find different from the two, now having been on two different sort of wavelengths like that?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question, because we did several shoots with him, and he goes back to that same era that I was talking about. I think we started working together in 2013 on different projects, and the relationship has grown over the years. And so the very first time I worked with him, I remember him being pretty nervous, but then I also identified that he was surrounded by a lot of his employees. So I think, when we did the next one, we did it in a studio setting, and then he was either a little bit more used to it, or he wasn't worried about the guys on the crew busting his chops.
Yeah.
So once we, so we did that, and then, so things were moving and flowing. So we had, like I said, better and better every time, but it was still very different to be able to just kind of, because when we would break from those video shoots, we would stand outside of the studio and we would end up talking for 20 minutes. And it's not like all the good stuff was in that conversation. There was still great stuff that was recorded, but there was so many things that came out that were just little subtext kind of stuff like we're doing right now. And that didn't come out into those videos, that showed his personality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the main difference that I experienced between somebody who I'd worked with behind the camera and then somebody I'd worked with around this table. That him and I got to talk about the ups and downs and some of the stresses that go into business, and those similarities like we started talking about just a little bit ago. And one of them was, he was talking about the silver lining of employees coming and going. And it's always tough, especially when your first couple employees, if once you part ways, that you miss having them around one, and then you start to kind of second guess, like, is there something I could have done better to retain them or what have you? And he said that the way that he looked at it is that employees do end up tending to come and go. You are going to be the one common denominator, and that those you do have the opportunity to share and influence a small piece of their life. So it's like I said, sharing time with them and influencing, a little part of their big picture. And if that was a positive thing, then you can look back on it fondly. And I thought that was a really cool way of thinking about it. It's kind of just like they talk about our life on this planet is such like it's a grain of sand, in the scope of how long the universe has been around, like that kind of thing. Yeah. So I thought it was a neat way of kind of flipping something that most people would think of as like a doom and gloom situation into a positive. Like we had a good run here, and hopefully they learned something from me, because I know I learned something from them.
Definitely. And I feel like I've been able to experience that firsthand, having been here like almost 10 years now. And I have seen sort of different eras and different, almost like lineups sort of in sports. There's different combinations of different skill sets that we've had over the years, while trying to maintain the original kind of culture that you sort of started the company as. And it was not easy for me to accept, early on, a couple times where, someone would get another opportunity and sort of almost like get called up and sort of get given an opportunity that they necessarily couldn't refuse, where you're like, we had such a good thing going here, you're part of this organic growth, and then, they get an opportunity. And it was hard for me to accept, and learn that. But over the years, I think I personally have been able to feel that similar feeling that Jared was saying, where it's like, well, the bottom line is I helped teach them something. Yeah. I can honestly say that there's something that they all would say they learned from me personally working alongside of them. And that makes me feel like fulfilled. And I see them all doing well and being successful. And I think that's like the best thing you can really hope for,
Yeah, and like Tony had brought up, like the fact of it's like watching a child grow up kind of thing. And a lot of times we'll hire somebody who we know we can work with their set of skills right today, but we would like them to get to, like, maybe I don't want to put numbers on it because that's just stupid. But, maybe they're here and we want them to be, up here.
The potential.
Right. And then they start to live up to that potential that we see, and then they get to a point where they get an offer somewhere else. And if somebody came in as an entry level graphic designer, and then they get offered like a like art director position at a company, how are you supposed to say, like, no,
stay?
Like that's your life, and that's this was part of your path, and we're happy that we can help. You feel confident about taking that position.
Definitely. And I feel like going back to our first episode, I did like have a moment where we sort of got off script a little bit. You ended up flipping it and asking me a question, and I'd have to go back. But I ended up sort of going into a tangent where I found myself super proud and like getting that like emotional, like, I call it wet throat, but like you're like sort of getting that frog in your throat. Not like you're going to just break down and cry, but right. That just where it hits you and you realize that you're feeling something.
Yeah.
And
they're called emotions.
Yeah. Dennis Reynolds. See, I've been having feelings lately.
Right.
Mac. Yeah, Dennis. Every day. But I ended up having some of those emotions and feeling very proud of just like what we've been able to accomplish over, a span of years and all those sort of nooks and crannies and relationships. And I think that's ultimately what the point of all this is like finding purpose in the freedom that is business ownership. Like you either go work for somebody that is sort of that corporate machine that you are a piece of, that if you died tomorrow, they'll find another place for you. Or you try to do something on your own or work for someone that did try to start up on their own. And I think that's what ultimately, we've been able to see all these different types of stories be told. And it's been really cool. Yeah. But truth be told, the emotional segment that I'm referring to,
I'm curious,
was not in the first episode because we unfortunately did not hit record
Yes.
on the audio for our first inaugural episode. So another lesson learned.
Yeah.
But I think it goes to show you, like, not being afraid to try something new like this podcast. But then also, once again, we could have just flipped the table and been like, fuck it, we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we had to just sort of put our heads down and be like, we'll do it again.
Right.
That's fine. We'll do it again. And we
Yeah.
did do it again. And no one would have ever known had we not said anything.
No, because I remember after that you had mentioned that you were worried that I was going to get like pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I know we were going back.
Because I
and
know
forth
that that's one thing.
Yeah.
Just trauma.
Yeah,
Just I didn't
yeah.
want you to have PTSD.
Well, we were using a new device.
Yeah.
You know, because we were going back and forth on how we're going to capture the audio and like that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So we used a different device, and I didn't. It didn't bother me all that much because it was us, and that was why we did the first episode, which is the two of us. Is that
Right.
we were still kind of feeling out the waters. We had a different set, so I think this set's cooler.
Yeah. It's evolved.
Yeah. So it'd be a lot cooler if you did.
But is there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I really don't. I don't think so. I guess like the only question I'd have for you is that you have had a podcast for a while, and you typically do it during the Bills seasons. And you had also made an analogy before, like about the different eras and things like that. Where and I can look back on different eras of Bean Media, but you've been here for almost 10 years now, and and I'm not going to ask you to pick a favorite. But I did want to ask about when you first started your podcast. It was a different era in Bean Media's history, and we did try this again. So what are your thoughts about the podcast you do alone, the podcasting we used to do back at the old office when it was more audio based, and then this one we're doing now? How do you feel about like those different eras, and then in compared to the one that we're in right now with just podcast speaking?
Yeah, and I think I would even throw in some that we've done with clients too. I think like there's definitely a different approach that you have to take somewhat from like the radio angle, right? Like dead air type thing. Like I think whereas it may be easier to know that there's someone to sort of pick you up or switch gears with, or, you know, play off of, or whether you're hosting or sort of answering the question, there is, you know, a little bit more room for the back and forth ping pong kind of action. Whereas when you are alone, it's a little bit more challenging, a little bit more regimented. Actually, I did just bring back my Bills Blue Mafia pod. I've been sort of taking a hiatus because, you know, the baby thing happening pretty soon. But I did just hop on last week for the first time because I was sort of like, it clicked where I was like, audio I could do, because the video aspect takes a little bit longer.
Right.
But then the audio side of it, I was like, I could just do the audio pretty quickly. Well, A, wasn't as quick as I initially thought. B, I was rusty as bleep. C, I found myself, I had gotten so much into a practice where I would have the camera on that the camera does give you a sense of audience, even if you're not live on, you know, wherever. You're still speaking to that camera, where the camera is your audience, and you have the ability to sort of speak to someone through the lens. Whereas I found myself a little rusty, but also after I got going, I found it a little bit more challenging because I wasn't speaking to the camera, and it was just kind of speaking to the ether.
You don't know where to look, and
and you don't know who you're really talking to. Whereas like the camera's on, you know, someone's going to be listening through that little piece of glass. But so I just did actually the second one last night, and I went into it with that mindset of like, all right, well, they're not doing the camera thing, but got to remember as if the camera was there and sort of treat it that way. So that's kind of like, I think some of the differences is like audio versus audio and video, because I think the video does bring out a different fear,
Mm-hmm.
but with that fear comes like, who are you when the lights go on type of thing.
Yeah.
And then I think sort of the duality of being able to work back and forth is a little bit easier than sort of doing it on your own. And that's what Theo Von, he does a little bit of both.
Right.
And I think that when he does the ones by himself, he gets a lot more internal and even maybe more open because there is no one there talking to. Whereas then if he has a guest, he is more in that sort of Q&A versus like sometimes he'll just be like, what are we talking about? I
Right.
don't even know what this show is.
Yeah.
But that's what that becomes, I think, that glimpse inside of that person that's on it.
Yeah, that's why I think this platform is really, really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and you, you get to be looser, and it's like the I could see where the difference makes sense to me, especially after you made that comparison, and I start thinking about some of the podcasts I watch / listen to, and when they're alone versus when they have somebody. It's a little bit different, and then sometimes it's a little bit challenging to make it through some of those parts where you could clearly tell that they don't know where they're going next.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they pull it together, and it's the funniest part of the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's, I think, some of the fun of it.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know. I mean, I guess this is time, right? We kind of we touched on everything.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Armando, how are we doing in time? We're good. All right. Armando says great. So thanks to Armando. And thanks, Jer. And we want to thank everybody out there who's listening, watching, whatever it might be. And we want to give just one more reminder that if you are listening or watching to this, to please subscribe, like, follow, all of those things. Just because if you do enjoy it, we'd hate for you to miss this next great guest that we're teasing right now. Or go back and visit the other stuff. It's a lot of fun. I think that's it. Thanks, everybody, from Beam Media Productions, as I choke on the end.
Perfect.
Thank you joining the Plant Your Flag podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. I like this chair. It's comfortable. Actually, I should probably see what my dome looks like here. Phone down. I can't get this mop looking just quite right. I'm sure Armando's gonna have all sorts of fun with this.
Sweet, thanks. All right.
Audio is recording.
Yep.
I could see the red light.
Action and fun and adventure. I'm gonna try to see. I almost killed myself. I'm more comfortable when I got my that.
Yeah, my pants are tight today. These
I got lots of room.
Rayleigh got
My
me these pants. I spilled bleach when I was cleaning up cat shit. I have to unbutton them sometimes to let my little pooch hang out a little.
Whatever. It's like it's all about comfort. It's whether it's Thanksgiving or if it's
well,
whether it's
I feel like I've gotten
September
a little
27th.
I've gotten a little poach going here.
Are you eating more?
Yeah.
And then I go to my doctor immediately. Drop your pants. I mean, that's normal. Now I walk in without my pants on.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just took first look at it. He's like, "Oh, you tore that," and I couldn't even take the dogs for a walk for like 6 months.
That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't want to do any kind of major reconstruction.
Not too
I
much.
don't hang myself.
Not too much. Just a little bit. Uh-oh. Is my foot showing? This foot?
A little bit.
I'm gonna put it away. Yeah.
Armando, flip a coin.
Okay.
Hold up.
All right. I'm ready.
Lucky number 7.
Unlucky.
A little hot and sweaty.
A little bit. Wasn't too bad.